An elderly man stepped into the little diner. His faded, worn uniform clung to his gaunt frame. Snickers rippled through the crowd. Whispers of mockery spread. Does this old man think he's in a movie? No one in that packed room suspected that, just 2 hours later, 3 military SUVs would roll up. Marine Corps soldiers, immaculate in dress blues, would file in and stand at rigid attention before him. How did a man once jeered become the focal point of a moment that left an entire community bowed in respect and shame? The story of Jonathan Caldwell, a Vietnam veteran, will take you on a journey of steadfastness, silent honor, and a shocking truth that silenced his mockers. Do you believe true honor needs no words, only deeds? Let's find out. Hit subscribe to our channel to discover even more captivating stories. Jonathan Caldwell, 74, paused before the frosted glass door of the little diner on Main Street. The autumn morning breeze carried a chill, and pale sunlight filtered through the window panes, making the motes of dust in the air dance. He inhaled deeply. The aroma of roasted coffee and toasted bread, scents bound up in so many memories from his days in uniform, filled his senses. His thin shoulders hunched as he pushed the door open. His lined face bore both sorrow and pride. The uniform that once sparked pride had long since faded. Loose threads hung like reminders of decades haunted by wartime memories. The shoulder straps felt tight, as though an invisible yoke squeezed his body and recalled the storms of bombs and bullets on Hill 875. On his chest, 3 medals, the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and the Purple Heart, still caught the light. Each one told a story no one now wanted to hear. Every medal bore the name of a fallen comrade, moments of life and death separated by a hair's breadth. He walked slowly. Each footstep seemed to mark the indelible journey in his mind. His left leg was stiff, an old war wound long healed, yet ever reminding him of the day a stray bullet tore through his body, nearly stealing both his life and his hope for the future. Yet, like a miracle, he survived and returned to this peaceful land. Each year, he still came back to this diner, the place where he and his brothers once shared scraps of bread and sips of hot coffee, vowing to endure every hardship together. The diner was busier than usual today. The worn wooden tables lined the walls, and warm yellow lights highlighted every grain and crack, carving the passage of time into the wood. A group of young people in the corner laughed and chatted, eyes glued to their phones. They filmed for TikTok, live-streamed, updated their stories, the language of youth that he could never quite grasp. As Jonathan approached his usual table, their gaze turned to him, as if a strange animal had entered the pen. "Hey, Grandpa, you think you're some kind of general?" scoffed Lisa, the blonde girl, her disdain clear on her face. They mocked him, using filters and stickers to ridicule his outdated uniform, let alone the shining medals on his chest. Ethan, the guy in the gray hoodie, held his phone high and sneered, "TikTok, check out Grandpa cosplaying 1970. They applauded and laughed uproariously, as if enjoying a comedy routine with priceless rights. Jonathan walked on in silence. His deep blue eyes were like dawn after the storm, unmoved by tears or anger. His steps remained steady, his back straight, his head held high, the bearing of a soldier schooled in discipline. He did not forget the dates of battle, nor the comrades who sacrificed themselves, and most of all, he refused to let ignorant taunts defeat him. Their laughter faded as he reached the corner table, where the tablecloth was threadbare but stood witness to countless conversations and solemn vows. Sitting down, Jonathan laid his hand on the tabletop. the rough wood grain pressed through his skin. He closed his eyes, savoring the rare moment of quiet amid the hustle of life. The image of Hill 875 rose before him, charred grasslands, the thunder of gunfire, comrades fallen in heaps. And in that instant, he saw the faces of his closest friends, smiling at him, their eyes shining with trust and hope. They did not see a faded uniform. They saw the steadfast will and unbroken heart of a loyal American soldier. The diner lights flickered as he opened his eyes, memories dissolved in the misty air. The server set a steaming cup of black coffee before him, its bitterness mingled with the saltiness of tears yet unfallen. Jonathan nodded his thanks, his voice warm and low. "Thank you, young lady." She bowed her head and offered a gentle smile, perhaps unaware of the story behind the uniform. He took a sip of coffee, thinking, though the young may casually discard the past, the memories of soldiers like him never fade. Every year, the anniversary of Hill 875 is more than a day of remembering fierce conflict. It is his promise to those he served with. He must tell the story. He must preserve the memory, so today's children know that freedom is not won easily. Amid the din of laughter and modern life, Jonathan felt a pang of emotion. He pressed his hand to his chest, clutching the silver star, the medal that once saved his life. Its cold metal vibrated against his aging heart, reminding him of his sacred duty, to recount history, to carry pride forward, so that one day the youngsters in this diner will look up and see a living witness to the past. When he rose to leave, he stood carefully, straightening his coat. The young crowd remained absorbed by their screens, but Jonathan did not need them to record him. He only needed them to listen, even just once. Stepping outside, he glanced back. His eyes gleamed with pride and reflection. The tranquil street welcomed him home. The chilly breeze tousled his hair. Today he had fulfilled his mission of remembrance. Tomorrow he would continue his own journey of storytelling, sharing courage, sacrifice, and camaraderie that never fades. 2. Jonathan Caldwell gently pushed back the old wooden chair. His back remained as straight as it had been in his years of service. Then he lowered himself into the seat. His thin hands, knuckles prominent beneath taut skin, rested neatly upon the faded tabletop. A flicker of sorrow passed through his eyes as he noticed the empty chair opposite, where his dearest friend, David, had sat before cruel cancer stole his life last autumn. Each Thursday, Jonathan was the last veteran to arrive here, as if to keep alive a fragment of the past, a vivid trace of those who lay fallen. The small space between the two chairs was the void of memory, where David's laughter still echoed, his bright eyes recalling rare moments of peace amid the fury of the jungle fires. Silence reigned in the diner for a few seconds. Only the soft clink of spoon against cup punctuated the air. Jonathan glanced up through the window. Morning light danced on the empty street. Then a gentle breeze drifted in, carrying the lingering scent of roasted coffee from the counter, mingled with the aroma of freshly baked blueberry muffins. His warm, steady voice carried across the room. Black coffee and a blueberry muffin. A brief order, enough for the server to note it down. Yet she only nodded perfunctorily and turned away, never returning with his drink. Her footsteps faded on the tiled floor, as indifferent as a young person untouched by sacrifice and loss. Laughter still chimed from the corner. A group of youths clustered around a long table, smartphones poised. The cold blue glow of screens lit their faces. One of them mock saluted the military, provoking giggles all around. Lisa, the blonde girl, her smile smug, whispered something to her friends. Then they all turned toward him. Curiosity and scorn met the sight of his worn uniform, then lingered on the glinting medals at his chest. "That's a real uniform? Looks like a movie prop," a male voice scoffed. Jonathan did not falter or flinch. He had faced the roar of Vietnam's battlefields. He had seen comrades fall beside him. He knew contemptuous laughter like this was nothing. Yet every cold glance from the server, every mocking jest from strangers, felt like invisible blades piercing his battle-hardened heart. His thin shoulders trembled slightly. Still, he held himself erect, chin raised, spine unbowed. As Jonathan sat in silence, an innocent voice rang out nearby. A small boy, about 6, wide-eyed with curiosity, ambled over, clutching a plush teddy bear, his oversized backpack strapped tightly to his back. His question was soft and clear. "Sir, are you a real soldier?" Jonathan's stern face softened for the first time. The furrows on his brow eased, and a proud sadness flickered in his eyes. He looked straight into the boy's clear gaze, as though he saw himself at 6, burning with passion for freedom and justice. Gently, he replied, "Long ago, son. Before you were born." That warm moment swept through the noisy room like a breeze. Yet it passed in an instant. The boy's mother, Sarah, hurried over, pulling her son away and murmuring, "Don't bother him, Tommy." She didn't spare Jonathan a glance, her eyes wary, as if he were a stranger more frightening than any fictional character. Tommy burst into tears. The teddy bear slipped from his hand. Disappointment clouded his young face. "What did he do wrong, Mom?" Tommy choked. Sarah's voice was cold. "Be quiet." Jonathan watched them go, swallowing his ache. He knew the next generation couldn't easily share the pain of the last. That war had become cold history. Yet in his battle-scarred heart, he longed to hear a word of thanks, to see understanding in a young soul's eyes. A moment later, the server returned with a porcelain tray, a steaming cup of black coffee, ribbons of steam dancing above. Beside it, a blueberry muffin, golden brown crust cracked to reveal plump, fresh berries. Jonathan accepted each item. The familiar aromas stirred his mind. The tart sweetness of blueberry blended with the muffin's gentle sugar, and the coffee's bitter depth, like an emotional symphony, sorrowful, yet cherished, warming his spirit. He lifted the cup, sipped slowly, letting the flavor awaken buried memories. He bit into the muffin. Tender crumbs melted on his tongue. In that instant, he felt David's gentle smile beside him, reminding him that friendship and loyalty never fade with time. Waves of warmth from food and drink coursed through his veins. His weathered heart felt youthful again. All the wounds, all the scars of war seemed to recede, leaving only the bond of comradeship forged through the years. Soft music from the old radio at the bar mingled with murmured conversations and clattering dishes. Jonathan closed his eyes, let everything else dissolve. He breathed steadily, listened to his heart. The gentle melody carried him back to Hill 875, where he witnessed the ultimate bravery of young soldiers. He heard the gunfire, the shouts, but also the warm calls of brotherhood in the storm. That was the sound of unity, of sacrifice. When he opened his eyes, he set down his cup and gazed at the empty chair. No words were spoken, yet in his soul, he honored his friend once more. David may be gone, but their friendship and the memories of those fighting days remained vivid. Jonathan managed a sad smile, rolled up his sleeve, and touched the silver star on his chest. The cold metal held the story of courage and enduring faith. He stood, straightened his coat, and gently stroked the metal before nodding farewell. The diners watched in stunned silence. Wonder and apprehension mingled in their eyes. Jonathan did not need applause or praise. He only hoped that young people would understand. Behind that faded uniform and gleaming medals lay a life of service, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty. Stepping outside, the evening breeze tousled his silver hair. He glanced back once more at the corner table where the empty chair waited. With a quiet smile, he told himself that tomorrow, and every Thursday thereafter, he would return, continuing to share his story in his own way, without bitterness, with sincerity, and the steadfast presence of a soldier who once fought to secure freedom for many. In the glow of the setting sun, the peaceful street seemed to bow its thanks to that silent veteran, ensuring those memories would never be forgotten. Time passed slowly, as if testing Jonathan Caldwell's patience. The cup of coffee before him remained untouched, no steam rising, though the diner had slipped past the rush of breakfast and settled into the leisurely pace of afternoon. He sat there, back straight, gaunt hands resting on the worn wooden table in a perfect posture practiced countless times, his gaze fixed on the invisible space before him, reliving each brutal moment on Hill 875, where blood and sweat mingled, where guns never ceased, and where his closest friends had fallen forever. On his chest, 3 gleaming medals bore witness to those painful stories, stories that no one here cared to hear. After a while, the sound of footsteps echoed behind him. The server finally approached, tall in her simple uniform, her impatient expression clear. Her husky voice rang out like a command. "Are you actually ordering something or just sitting there?" Jonathan lifted his head slightly. His deep eyes met hers, still polite and unchanging. He repeated his order in a steady, measured tone. "Black coffee and a blueberry muffin, please." She glanced at him perfunctorily and turned away. No promise to bring his order, no comforting look. Her footsteps receded, leaving a heavy silence that seemed to drown him in abandonment. The din of youth continued unabated. In the corner, Ethan remained glued to his phone, adding a cartoon filter to Jonathan's stern face, prompting raucous laughter from his friends. They clapped and cheered, delighted to harvest funny content for their TikTok channels. Lisa seized the opportunity to mock, "This grandpa must be reliving his glory days." Then she sneered, "Who wears a Halloween costume in April?" Their whispered laughter rang through the diner, yet no one dared defend the lone old man. Other customers, though not mocking outright, chose silence. They ignored Jonathan, as if he'd interrupted their conversation. Some paused mid-bite, glanced at him in surprise, then hurried back to their aimless chatter. In a rare moment, an elderly woman in a vintage floral sweater whispered to her friend, "Maybe someone should help him." But her words vanished into thin air. No one stood or moved. All eyes returned to screens or half-empty iced teas. Jonathan watched the woman's retreating figure, then turned his attention back to the broad, empty table before him. Beneath the warm yellow lights, he moved deliberately, tracing his fingers over the tabletop. Its chipped grain spoke of winters past, of countless lives seated here. He closed his eyes, striving to summon Hill 875's image, young soldiers' eyes blazing with trust, comrades' calls echoing through smoke and fire. He heard bullets whistling by, felt flesh tear, but also the warmth of courage and unbreakable camaraderie. In his memory, there was no place for scornful laughter or strangers' indifference. His breath slowed and steadied, matching the unhurried rhythm of the afternoon. Jonathan felt cold beads of sweat on his brow, each heartbeat weak yet proud. On his chest, the silver star shimmered softly, reminding him he must not falter before thoughtless mockery. He did not need the crowd's empathy. He only needed to preserve the bridge to the past, so that the story of sacrifice and freedom would never be forgotten. Time passed further. The server's footsteps returned slowly, this time her hands empty. Jonathan opened his eyes, watching her stand wordlessly by his table. His gaze was gentle, probing. She stammered, "Sir, coffee, muffin," but her words lacked the warmth to bridge the gulf between them. She bowed her head and walked away, still with nothing in her hands. The blow to his battle-hardened heart was sharp, yet he remained silent. Finally, he rose and swept his gaze across the diner. The hollow laughter, the vacant stares, and even the elderly woman's unacted whisper all stirred a deep solitude within him. Jonathan straightened his shoulder straps, touched the dangling Purple Heart at his breast pocket. He laid a hand on the metal, stroking its metal edge, holding tight the last fragment of his comrade's memories. His figure emanated a resolute strength, as if challenging time itself and the indifference of a newer generation. His slow steps led him to the door. The glass before him reflected the image of a brave old soldier, his gaunt shoulders unbowed. Pushing the door open, afternoon sunlight fell upon the empty chair where David once sat, revealing every fray in the faded cushion. Jonathan paused for a moment. He raised his hand in a gentle wave of farewell. No words, no tears, just a solemn, heartfelt gesture. The quiet street welcomed him back to the world outside. The evening breeze carried a faint saltiness from distant seas, reminding him of the freedom for which he and his comrades had fought. Jonathan walked on, his silhouette shrinking on the gravel-littered sidewalk, bearing an unshakable pride. In the red brick twilight, the image of the old soldier seemed almost mythical, a living testament to courage and loyalty in a generation that increasingly forgets its past. To him, the empty cup was no longer pain. It was a symbol of an unfinished mission, to tell the world the story of Hill 875, so that freedom and sacrifice would never fade into oblivion. Half an hour passed, and Jonathan Caldwell sat motionless on the worn wooden chair by the diner window. The yellow light glinted off his faded uniform, yet not a single patron glanced his way with any intention of service or concern. Finally, he produced his cracked leather wallet. With care, he placed a $10 bill on the edge of the table, an unspoken message. He'd waited long enough, and now it was time to leave. He rose slowly, shifting his weight onto his right leg, effort masking the old shrapnel wound in his left. The click of his worn leather shoes echoed on the tiled floor. Each metal on his chest caught the weak light, yet those sounds and shines felt lost amid people absorbed in their phones and chatter. Stepping outside, he was greeted by the first raindrops of the season. The sky was slate gray, clouds heavy with water, tearing at the town's rare calm. Jonathan hastened beneath the awning. He looked up at its patched, weathered canopy, a lone shield against instant drenching. Yet the rain intensified, torrents cascading like a curtain that severed him from the world inside, the world that had forgotten the noble values he and his comrades had sacrificed to secure. Under the awning, he pulled out his battered flip phone, its plastic corner cracked, and fumbled a few buttons. The screen flickered to life with numbers. After a few short rings, his call connected. His voice was soft and concise, as though not to disturb the rain's hush. "I've arrived. Wait for me at the old diner, as always." He closed the phone, slipped it into his breast pocket, and let the rain's patter be his companion. Inside, the old radio's music strained through the air. A few customers turned toward the window. In their eyes flickered anticipation, or perhaps satisfaction, that the old man would fail. They assumed Jonathan would leave in defeat, yet he remained unmoving in the downpour, a living memory standing firm against life's rush. His uniform, his medals, all lay ignored in their indifference. The rain grew heavier, underscoring Jonathan's solitude. Splashes rose from the pavement, soaking his collar, seeping into his sleeves. He tilted his head skyward, letting cold drops strike his cheek, stripping away the hardened shell he'd worn for decades. Yet his heart remained warm, with memories of his comrades, of those who fell under bombardment, and with the fierce belief that, though the next generation might forget, he would never abandon his duty to preserve history. At that moment, a young server appeared at the door, carrying a porcelain tray. New on the job, her wide-eyed expression revealed she'd never witnessed such solemn moments. Despite her colleagues' muttered complaints and hostile glances, she stepped toward Jonathan. Her heart softened at the sight of his shivering shoulders beneath the downpour. She gently placed a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. "I'm sorry, sir. This one's on the house," she said, voice hesitant but sincere. Jonathan accepted the cup. Its warmth rose into his nostrils, the coffee's gentle bitterness spreading across his tongue. He nodded his thanks. In his deep eyes shone genuine gratitude. Under the awning, the rain still fell without mercy, but Jonathan did not move inside. He lifted the coffee and gazed down the rain-slicked street. "I'm waiting for some old friends," he said, as if to explain, but the rain drowned out his words. The server only offered a slight nod, then retreated into the diner, leaving Jonathan alone on the threshold between two worlds, the hurried, indifferent interior and the stormy realm of memory outside. He sipped the coffee. Each drop seemed to separate him further from the present. The coffee's bitter aroma and the damp air reminded him of gunpowder and rainforest after the downpours in Vietnam. The rain's steady roar felt like distant alarms, echoing the rattle of machine guns that never slept. Beneath the awning, Jonathan sat again, weariness easing through his joints. The blueberry muffin arrived at last, plump as a blooming flower amid the rain, with tart berries peeking through a delicate golden crust. He held it in his palm, admiring each fresh blueberry, recalling David's bright smile as they once shared muffins together. Raindrops fell from the awning onto the tabletop, mingling with the coffee's warmth to paint a scene of stark contrasts, hot and cold, mirroring a life of combat and peace. Jonathan smiled faintly, eyes closed, letting it all flow around him, offering the past a moment of quiet. Though some had forgotten him, though others had shown apathy, here was a young heart, ready to comfort and understand the value of sacrifice. He raised the muffin to his lips. Each sweet tart bite eased the chill. Every morsel seemed to tell a story of reunion, of comradeship that never fades. In that tranquil moment, Jonathan felt the warmth of the past return, where David and his battlefield brothers still stood beside him. As the rain eased, he set down his coffee. He looked out across the puddle-strewn street. At his feet, the water reflected his figure, a proud old soldier, posture unwavering, eyes full of thought. Jonathan knew that whether Hill 875's story was heard or not, he would continue to walk forward, unwavering in his belief in noble ideals. He adjusted his coat, lightly pressed the Purple Heart at his breast, then rose slowly. In the dimming post-rain light, Jonathan Caldwell's silhouette seemed a living legend, breathing history and embodying courage. He stepped onto the road ahead. Each footfall reminded the next generation that freedom never arrives easily, and that memories of the fallen deserve honor, even if only by a simple cup of coffee in the rain. 2 hours after Jonathan Caldwell quietly entered the diner, the rain still drummed steadily on the old tin roof. The silence was so complete that one could hear each drop splatter on the damp concrete floor. Jonathan sat motionless. His uniform slanted under the warm yellow light, droplets clinging to the fabric, his gaze drifting toward memories that would never fade. Inside, patrons murmured along to the soft music from the old radio. Their conversations flared briefly and then died out. No one remembered the silent veteran in the shadowed corner, until the roar of engines shattered the gloomy rain's rhythm. 3 gleaming military SUVs pulled up to the diner like proud steeds. Government plates glinted, headlights reflecting the spray of rain. The first door swung open, and 6 Marine Corps soldiers in crisp blue dress uniforms stepped out, silent yet imposing. Their postures were as straight as swords. Each measured step carried them through the mud and moss. Rain poured down their shoulders, yet not one face betrayed a tear or a tremor. Jonathan, standing under the awning, heard the engines and slowly turned. The diner light caught the 3 medals on his chest, then reflected in his eyes, which suddenly shone with hope. He inclined his head, raised his hand in a perfect salute, an image so rare it drew every eye. The 6 Marines returned the salute, holding it until Jonathan lowered his arm, then gently brought theirs back to their sides. Inside, everything awakened. Whispers fell silent as the glass doors banged open. Customers turned, phones lifted, no longer to mock, but with curious, respectful eyes. They leaned forward, straining to see the old soldier outside, and the 6 young Marines, embodiments of discipline and honor. The Marines entered the diner in heavy silence, as if carrying history itself into this small space. Their leader, Captain Michael Thompson, strode to the center, stern-faced, yet with quiet emotion in his eyes. His voice, warm and clear, carried across the room. "We have come to find the table of Corporal Jonathan Caldwell." Beneath the yellow light, Jonathan's face looked pale but resolute. He pointed, his hand trembling, toward the corner where the old wooden chair stood empty. The server, who had ignored him all afternoon, now shook as she pointed the way. "He's standing under the awning, sir." Captain Thompson turned to face the crowd. His voice rang out like a declaration. "The man you ridiculed today saved my father on Hill 875 in 1967. Without Corporal Caldwell, neither my father nor I would be here." The diner held its breath. Even the rain seemed to pause, leaving only the pounding of hearts. Ethan, still holding his phone, slowly lowered it, his face flushed with shame. Lisa bowed her head, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Other customers held their breath, trying to hold on to the image of the old soldier trembling under the awning. Captain Thompson stepped toward Jonathan and continued. "Corporal Caldwell earned the Silver Star for heroism. He carried 3 wounded Marines through enemy fire, even though he himself was gravely wounded. Today, we are here to correct the record. No one stirred. Every eye was on Jonathan, waiting for a miracle. Captain Thompson withdrew a dark wooden box from his pocket and opened it for all to see. Inside lay a gleaming medal engraved with name and date. Outstanding Service Medal. The soft creak of the box opening affirmed the power of truth. Captain Thompson lifted the medal, then placed it in Jonathan's hands. "This is the honor you should have received 60 years ago," he said warmly. "Your courage saved 9 lives." Jonathan bent at the waist, his hands trembling as he received the medal. The rain outside still fell, but it seemed to hush as if to hear his breath. The diner erupted in a quiet yet heartfelt round of applause. Faces that once sneered were now astonished, many wiping away tears. The wooden chair in the corner became witness to history, an old soldier honored after nearly 6 decades of silent sacrifice. No long speeches followed, only Jonathan's heavy breathing and the soft click of metal on his chest. He slowly brought the medal to his lips, kissing its edge in deep gratitude. His eyes lifted to Captain Thompson, then to the 6 Marines who had braved the rain to stand beside him. Time seemed to freeze in that moment, the valor of the past, the recognition of the present, and hope for the future. As the last applause died, Captain Thompson nodded to Corporal Caldwell. The 6 Marines returned to formation, saluted, and departed toward the 3 SUVs. Jonathan remained, the new medal pinned beside his 2 old ones, all gleaming in the rainy light. He stepped forward, smoothing his uniform, brushing rain from his face, then turned to the crowd one final time before walking away. The rain still fell, yet each drop seemed to pause upon the medals on Jonathan's chest. He knelt briefly, bowing before the empty chair where David once sat, sharing that moment of glory with his fallen friend. Finally, he rose and stepped into the rain, leaving behind not just a respected veteran, but a living testament to courage, camaraderie, and the power of overdue, heartfelt recognition. Under the dim yellow light and the distant rain's echo, Jonathan Caldwell's story resonated on, awakening conscience and heart in those who had once forgotten. The diner's cold, indifferent atmosphere transformed instantly. Mocking laughter faded into a heavy, emotional silence. Patrons who had been gathered in lively conversation now stood motionless, quietly looking at Jonathan Caldwell, the solitary old corporal under the rain, with eyes no longer scornful, but filled with deep feeling. A few quickly wiped away tears as they realized the truth just revealed. He had saved the life of the captain's father and many comrades long ago. The server, who had ignored Jonathan all morning, now hurried to clear a table by the window. Her hand trembled as she placed before him a steaming cup of black coffee. Its rich aroma mingled with the warm scent of freshly roasted beans. Beside it lay a blueberry muffin, its golden crust delicately cracked, revealing sweet, tart berries. Her eyes were red, her voice choked as she uttered her first apology. I'm sorry, sir." Each "sir" echoed like an attempt to atone for every harsh moment before. Not long after, Ethan, the young man who had live-streamed his ridicule, approached Jonathan with slow, hesitant steps. His face flushed, he stammered, I deleted all the videos. I'm ashamed of myself." He bowed deeply, as if to pay for his mistake. Jonathan offered a gentle smile, his warm voice forgiving. "War taught me who deserves judgment. You are not one of them." His words erased Ethan's humiliation and imparted a lesson in mercy and honor. Lisa, the blonde instigator of mockery, followed after Ethan, her expression anxious, more fragile than ever. Voice trembling, she confessed, My grandfather served in Vietnam. Today, I dishonored him. Regret was etched across her youthful features. Jonathan gently patted her shoulder, his eyes kind. Your grandfather will forgive you. Honor his service by remembering that a uniform carries the weight of duty and must be respected. His simple, profound counsel made Lisa nod, as if regaining faith in gratitude's value. Nearby, little Tommy reappeared, handing Jonathan a roughly drawn card. It depicted 3 soldiers beneath the U.S. flag with the words, "Thank you for protecting my father's friends." He held it out, his clear eyes brimming with gratitude. Jonathan nodded, kissed the card's edge, and accepted it from Tommy's hands, cherishing it as a priceless memory. In that brief moment, the small diner became sacred ground, where stories of sacrifice and brotherhood reclaimed their place. Formerly indifferent customers now spoke softly with one another, sharing tales of the old soldier and his timeless valor. Some wept quietly, others bowed their heads respectfully. The once humble space held a gathering of awakened hearts. From that day on, the diner became a meeting place for local veterans and their families. A community group erected a wall of honor on the side wall, a dignified wooden frame with Jonathan Caldwell's portrait at its center, surrounded by photos of comrades lost on Hill 875. Each image bore a caption: name, rank, heroic deed. The diner wore a solemn dignity, expressing deep gratitude to the silent soldiers. Ethan, transformed by his lesson, enlisted in the Marine Corps voluntarily. He told friends, "I want to live worthy of the forgiveness Corporal Caldwell gave me." Each morning, he donned his blue uniform, carrying Jonathan's story as inspiration. Lisa did not stand by either. She founded a scholarship fund for veterans' children, named the Jonathan Caldwell and Lisa's Grandfather Fund. It awards annual scholarships to families with parents who served, helping them overcome financial hardship and excel in school. At each ceremony, Lisa spoke of Jonathan's honor and sacrifice, ensuring young people never forget freedom's cost. Each year, on the anniversary of Hill 875, May 17th, the 6 Marines, now senior officers, returned to the diner. They set a long table beside the wall of honor, calling it the Silent Heroes Table. At 80 years old, Jonathan still wore his faded uniform, its fabric worn and wrinkled. He sat at the head of the table, not to be glorified, but to remember those who never returned. The 6 Marines stood tightly behind him, saluted, then knelt, a rare civilian tribute. Town residents and diners gathered with flowers and cards, hands clasped in reverence. Some placed wreaths beneath Jonathan's photo. In that moment, the steady lintel of the rain seemed to pause, leaving only the soft whisper of wind and the collective vow to preserve history. Jonathan held his hot coffee, sipping gently, his gaze distant as he looked at the wall. Then he turned to those around him, smiling kindly. Honor never fades, even when no one notices. His words rang warmly, affirming the eternal values woven by war and peace alike. Jonathan Caldwell's story, born on that rainy afternoon, spread through the town and beyond. Shared on news sites, viral on social media, it inspired countless YouTube videos and articles on courage and forgiveness. He became remembered not only for medals or war tales, but for awakening a community's pride and responsibility to its past. And every year, when Hill 875's rain gently taps the diner's awning, those 3 gleaming SUVs of the military return silently, 6 Marines in pristine uniforms, linking past and present. At the silent heroes table, Jonathan stands proud. No words of bitterness, only the steadfast presence of a warrior who lived and sacrificed for freedom. In the shimmering twilight, his story reminds us that honor is an everlasting torch, guiding those who carry its flame into the world. If you believe respect needs no words, only deeds, please hit subscribe. Like and share with your friends in the US, and subscribe for more powerful stories.